Yes, Preacher, you're a lucky dog. Once there lived a dog named Preacher who was very lucky. He was very lucky because he could have anything he wanted. Preacher lived all alone with an old woman in an apartment in the city. The old woman was very kind and gave Preacher everything she thought he might like. The old woman had no children or grandchildren, so at Christmas or other holidays she would buy presents for Preacher. Preacher got an Easter basket full of candy at Easter, a pie for George Washington's birthday, a box of candy on Valentine's Day, a turkey for Thanksgiving, champagne for New Year's, and a pumpkin for Halloween. A whole room full of good things for Christmas. Preacher also had 4 or 5 birthdays a year because the old woman knew dogs didn't live as long as people. She wanted to make sure Preacher got his fair share of birthdays. The old woman never gave Preacher dog food. Instead, he ate hamburgers, hot dogs, pot pies, and TV dinners. Preacher was especially fond of the Mexican TV dinner, so the old woman got it for him all the time. When Preacher was good, he would get a steak. Preacher wasn't always good. Sometimes he wouldn't eat his supper. He just played with it and spread it around the apartment. Other times, Preacher would hide behind the couch all day and not come out. By now, you may have guessed Preacher's problem. Preacher the lucky dog was also Preacher the lucky fat dog. Oh, Preacher, don't be so upset. There's worse than being someone's pet. Don't fret, mope the day away. The old woman took Preacher for a walk in the park every day. Someone was always saying, "What a fat dog!" This put Preacher in the worst temper you could imagine. To make matters worse, the old woman never let Preacher run around and kept him on a leash. Preacher had to sit all day while the old woman chatted with her friends about who felt the worst. Whenever someone would say, "What a fat dog," the old woman would answer, "That means he's happy." Preacher wasn't happy. Preacher was at the end of his rope. Finally, the inevitable happened. 2 people on the same day said, "My, what a fat dog." No sooner had this been said for the second time by a rather fat old man wearing a green hat, when something inside Preacher gave way. Preacher jumped up and buried his teeth into the man's foot. This caused quite a commotion, and when the dust had settled, Preacher was not to be seen. The old woman walked around the park calling, "Preacher! Preacher!" But Preacher did not come out of the bushes where he was hiding. Preacher's gone, he's run away. Preacher's gone, he's run away. It got dark and the old woman went home, but Preacher did not come out. Preacher was afraid to come out because he had never bitten anyone before and he didn't know what would happen to him. Besides, this was the chance he had been waiting for. Now he was free to run around. The only problem was that Preacher was afraid to run around. Preacher sat in the dark for what seemed like a week, but daylight didn't come. All at once, Preacher froze right next to him in the dark. He heard someone breathing. When Preacher didn't move, the voice said, "Hey, Slim, what's cooking?" Preacher had never been called Slim before, so he was encouraged to speak. Preacher told his story. "I bit this man and he ran away. Now I don't know what to do." Good for you, Slim. Just trust in me. Ace is the name and good times is the game. By the way, Slim, where have you been hanging out? You look pretty healthy. When Preacher told Ace about the old woman, his mouth began to water. Listen here, Slim, said Ace. I have a plan that will help both of us. I'll give you a few tips on living in the streets, and you tell me where the old woman lives. Preacher agreed because he didn't know what else to do. Life on the streets sounded like quite an adventure. That night, Ace showed Preacher the butcher shops, stores, places to sleep, and the best garbage cans in town. Preacher told Ace that the old woman would probably be in the park the next day looking for him. Early that morning, the old woman appeared. Preacher watched from the bushes but did not come out. Ace was not to be seen. Finally, as the day was drawing to a close, Ace appeared. Ace was limping up to the old woman, whimpering to make a statue cry. The old woman stopped her search and looked at Ace's paw. Ace continued his sorrowful cry. The old woman began to cry herself, and soon had hired a little boy with a red wagon to carry Ace in. Soon the old woman, the boy, and Ace all disappeared. Preacher became quite dejected. He walked around and even looked in a few garbage cans, but there was nothing in them but bones and other worthless trash. What Preacher had wanted for so long, freedom, was quickly forgotten. When Preacher thought of Ace eating a steak in his old bowl, at that very moment he was furious. Preacher was so mad that he began to bark. Preacher never barked, but once he started, there was no stopping him. Preacher barked until a book was thrown out the window and hit him on the head. Preacher got an idea, ran back to his old apartment, got under the old woman's window, and began to howl. But the old woman lived so high up that she didn't hear Preacher. Someone must have heard him because a truck arrived, and in the truck was the man with the net. Before Preacher could say hello, the old man threw the net over Preacher and carried him away. The man put Preacher in a cage in a funny building that was full of dogs and a terrible smell. Now, Preacher, it's a new world that you found, with hard times, troubles all around. Preacher had plenty of time to think because he never went anywhere. Preacher just sat in his cage all day and every day. Preacher thought and thought, but he could not understand the big change in his life. The food they gave Preacher was not fit for a dog. Preacher ate as little of the food as was possible. Worse than the food were all the people who came and stared at him. Early in the day, little boys came and poked Preacher with sticks. Other children called him a fatty, hot dog, chow hound, thunder puppy, and 50-pound hound, and other terrible names. The names put Preacher in an evil mood and ruined his day. Other children came and were very nice to Preacher and brought him candy and other nice things to eat. But old Mr. Crumbs would drive them away when they were feeding the dogs. Later in the day, older people came and made a big fuss and took some of the dogs home with them. No one took Preacher. He was still too fat. Instead, they took some dumb kitten or a yappy pup. Finally, when things looked their darkest, an old man came and started talking to Preacher. Preacher liked this man, so he did the one trick that he knew, which was to stand on his head. The man must have liked the trick because he let Preacher out of the cage, put him on a leash, and led him home. Preacher had never felt quite so happy in his life. Preacher was out of his cage. He was not fat like he used to be, and he didn't have to live with the old woman. Preacher was even happier when the old man gave Preacher some real food: pies, cakes, steaks, burgers, beef stew, and other goodies. Preacher had attacked savagely the first food that had been brought to him. Then, after hours of eating, while in the middle of a bowl of clam chowder, it hit him. The old man was just like the old woman and would feed Preacher too much. Preacher stopped eating and started thinking. Other things did not look so good either. The old man put clothes on Preacher and took him for a walk. The old man took Preacher to the same park, and sure enough, there was the old woman walking Ace. Ace was even fatter than Preacher had been, so Preacher began feeling less silly in his clothes. Soon the man started teaching Preacher tricks. Preacher didn't like these tricks and was always falling down. When Preacher fell down, the man would yell and not give him a biscuit. Finally, after Preacher had a bad day trying to ride a skateboard, he decided to leave his new home. Preacher put on his new hat, went to the door, opened it, and took one step and stopped. Were things really that bad? Sure, he didn't like having to do tricks all day, and he would like to run around without a leash, but he really had it pretty soft. Preacher was about to turn around when the wind blew the door shut behind him. So Preacher headed down the street, content with the idea that he could always return if he wanted. Preacher went down to the park where he spent the day running around, chasing butterflies and doing whatever crossed his mind. When it got dark, Preacher went downtown and checked out the supermarkets and the garbage cans. The scraps he found didn't seem too bad after what he had been eating at the pound. Preacher went back to the bushes when it got dark. He lay down and soon fell asleep. He wasn't asleep long when it began to rain. Preacher tried to ignore the rain, but he was soon soaked. Preacher picked himself up and went to town to look for a dry place to sleep. Preacher looked in the darkest and loneliest looking streets and soon found a doorway. Preacher lay down, but it was too cold and damp to sleep well. Preacher finally fell asleep and dreamed of the old woman and the old man where he used to live. Preacher woke up when the door behind him opened. A young woman with a big hat on came out. She started petting Preacher and was very nice. She took Preacher up to her room and gave him some milk. Preacher was very grateful and showed the woman his tricks. By now, Preacher had learned lots of tricks. The woman's name was Melissa, and she didn't have very much money. When she saw Preacher's tricks, she got an idea. Later that day, Melissa and Preacher went down to a busy street corner. Melissa played a fiddle while Preacher did his tricks. Preacher rode a bicycle and juggled. And for a finale, Preacher and Melissa danced. Now, Preacher and Melissa don't dance too much anymore, but if you're in the city and you see a woman playing a fiddle and a dog doing some tricks, you'll know who it is. The end. It's time for you to practice all your tricks. At least you have a rope for your bed. All you gotta do is stand on your head. preacher, you can juggle, you can sing. You're learning you can do most anything. You can pull a rabbit from a hat, so keep your mouth closed, you won't be fat. Now preacher, the story's about to end. You met Melissa, now you have a friend. For the snack attacks, don't forget to jog, 'cause preacher, you're lucky. 'Cause preacher, you're a lucky dog.